What's up YouTube? This is Russell from Russell's Reef coming to you with episode 14 of the Waterbox 70.3 build. It's been 4 months since the system's been up and running, so this episode we're just going to go over what's worked, what hasn't, and just the overall state of the system. Thanks for tuning in. Let's take a look.
So it's been 4 months now. As you can see, everything is doing pretty well. I am still battling green hair algae. I've been using some GFO and then manually removing it, but I've been taking it very, very slow. I really want to make sure that the SPS aren't shocked and have all the nutrients they need to stay colored up. That's my main concern. So if that means that I have to look at a little bit of brown hair or green hair algae on a rock, that's fine with me, just as long as the SPS aren't affected. That's my main concern. In addition to the SPS, I want to make sure that the hair algae is not affecting the zoas and pallies, which it has been a little bit. It seems to get in between the different polyps and kind of irritate them and start to compete with them for light. So that's just something I'm keeping an eye on. Overall, the zoas and pallies have been growing great. Can't complain there. The only pally that I've had trouble with is the purple monsters. They were growing good, but then they just kind of stopped growing and a couple of the polyps bailed out. I think they're just in a little bit too high a flow for them. So we'll see if they make it, but all the other ones have all multiplied and they're turning into colonies, and it's all really coming together as far as the zoas and pallies on the bottom half of the tank. As far as the LPS, the large polyp stony corals that you can see in this shot, the DUNCAN's doing good and the FROGSPAWN is doing good as well. If you follow along, you might have noticed that I had a little bit of a problem with my LPS. I had a peppermint shrimp that loved to destroy any type of large polyp, so I was able to catch that guy. It was actually the night after I put in the FROGSPAWN. I looked at about 2 hours after lights out, and he was just going to town on the FROGSPAWN, eating all the polyps, just ripping it apart. So that night I was able to catch him and put him in the sump, and since then it took the FROGSPAWN like, I don't know, probably a couple weeks to recover. And then I also have a GONIPORA that was fully retracted, and that guy is slowly recovering. So that's how my LPS are doing. They're on the road to recovery, which is nice. My SPS are also doing pretty good. The Monty caps are all colored up nicely and growing very quickly. That organ tort that you can see front and center, that guy's a slow grower, but it's encrusting and keeping its brilliant blue color, so I'm happy with that one. All the other SPS are growing. No crazy growth rates or anything, kind of just inching along, but all of them are keeping the color, which is the main thing that I'm concerned about. I think the growth will come once they get settled in. For me, it usually takes like 3 months for SPS just to get their spot, and then they really start taking off. As far as the fish in the system are concerned, everything's doing good. I did lose one hyphen goby that jumped out of the tank and squeezed through a little 1/4-inch gap in the lid. I had a pair, so there was one left over, and I was very worried about it. It wasn't coming out very often when I was feeding, and it's just kind of shy, so I wasn't sure it was going to make it, and then it just kind of went missing about a month ago. So I think that I may have lost that one too. As far as the other fish in the system, the tang is doing awesome. Loves to just graze all day, and the clowns are doing good. The Midas Blenny is actually much better now that I got the tang in the system. Before, when it was just the Midas Blenny, I think he thought he was the boss of the tank and would just terrorize all the other fish. So now that the tang's in there, the Midas Blenny has definitely calmed down, which is awesome. It makes the tank much more enjoyable to watch when the Midas Blenny isn't freaking out all the time. Although he is freaking out in this video because he sees me close to the tank. As far as maintenance and water chemistry go, I've been doing probably a 5-gallon water change every month. So I've only done, I think, 3 or 4 since I've had the tank up. Kind of just doing it just so I can siphon the sand out, and that's worked so far. As far as the chemistry goes, my alkalinity has been pretty stable. When I added the GFO, it kind of took a hit, I think. But now it is bounced back. It's mostly handled by dosing calc to my ATO, but I did start dosing 2-part on top of the calcwasser because I usually check my alkalinity daily with the HANA checker, and once it starts to drop, then I'll start using the 2-part, which happened probably about 2 weeks ago. So as of now, I'm dosing about 10 mLs of alk and calcium every day. So overall, I'm real happy with where the tank's at. I do have a lot of algae, but it doesn't bother me at all. I think it's just part of having a new tank. You go through all the phases, and it's just important not to do anything too crazy to try to control it. So the algae is a bit of an issue, but aside from that, everything's pretty good. As you can tell in the video, I have a lot of coralline algae growing, so that's always a good sign. And then I also have a ton of sponges growing throughout the tank. So the tank is maturing, which is awesome. Just keep in mind that I did have these rocks cycling / cooking in the garage for about 4 months before I set up the tank. So the rocks got a little head start, and I'm hoping that'll help stabilize the tank a little quicker. So far, I haven't really noticed much of a difference, but it's impossible to tell really. So moving on to the sump updates. When I went to clean my sump, I found the goby down there. So he somehow managed to squeeze through the overflow and down the overflow drain and end up in my sump. He was missing for about a month, and I found him today. So good news, he's back in the display. I caught him and doing well. As you can see, I had a huge hair algae outbreak in my refugium section. I'm blaming this on the Chaeto. I think the Chaeto started dying and then just was releasing tons of nutrients, and the hair algae was just eating it up. So I decided to take the Chaeto out and just go with the hair algae in the refugium and see how that works until I can get things more stable. But I'm fairly certain that the Chaeto wasn't doing anything except dying and then adding all those nutrients back in the system. And if you take a quick look here, right by the pump, you can see the peppermint shrimp that loves to destroy expensive corals. I talked earlier about that night when I first put in my FROGSPAWN coral. And I came out after lights out, and I saw him just going to town on it. So that night, I had to act fast. So I went online and made a little trap. Here's a picture of what he did to the frog spawn. As you can see, almost eaten alive. And here's a picture of him that night after I caught him in the trap. Super easy to make the trap. I caught him in about 10 minutes. So he's out there hanging out in the sump probably for eternity. So that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. All right.